Good morning, and welcome to day 97 of F260 at First Baptist Meridian. Today we look at Proverbs chapters 3 and 4. And as we suggested yesterday, we're doing something a little bit different with Proverbs. We're not going fully into how wisdom literature works, how to interpret everything. Instead, I want to work on tying Proverbs in with the rest of the Bible. What we tend to do with Proverbs, since we don't have a lot of direct context, is we almost treat this like God's Twitter account. He's putting out Revelation 144 characters at a time, and just do your best with it. But what Proverbs is really doing is providing this framework, these parameters for how we are to experience, understand, interpret, and interact with life as we have it. In fact, you might think of Proverbs as an extended set of guardrails from here into the horizon of life. In fact, one of the most interesting things for me is, as we've seen elsewhere, life is used with the metaphor of journeying. We saw this in the opening verse of Psalms, right? How happy is the one who does not walk in the advice of the wicked, or stand in the pathway with sinners, or sit in the company of mockers. We also see this in today's passage. My dad's favorite verse is in today's passage, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Ways are not just your ways of doing, it's your ways of going. In fact, wisdom is often associated with the verb halak, to go, to journey. And why do I think that's interesting? Because where will today's reading ultimately go? It will go to the two ways, the way of wisdom and the way of the wicked. One characterized by the fear of the Lord, the other characterized by the fear of man. You see this in chapter 4, verses 11 following. I am teaching you the way of wisdom. I am guiding you on straight paths. When you walk, your steps will not be hindered, and when you run, you will not stumble. Hold on to instruction. Don't let go. Guard it, for it is your life. Keep off the path of the wicked. Don't proceed on the way of evil ones. Avoid it. Don't travel on it. Turn away from it and pass it by. Why do I think that's interesting? I think it's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, where does the Bible story go wrong, so to speak? In the Garden of Eden, right? And what's the first thing that the serpent does, that Satan does to distract them? He questions the revelation they received from God. He gives them the desire to be wise in their own estimation. And when they eat of the fruit and their eyes are opened, not only knowing good, but now knowing evil, what's one of the direct consequences of their sin? They have to leave the garden. When Cain kills Abel, what's one of the direct consequences? He has to become a wanderer. He has to walk a different path. You see this, by the way, with Israel as a whole. When Israel as a nation goes wrong, what happens? They journey into exile. And where does that all start? It starts with Solomon. Here's this king who receives, the only king who receives a truly unified kingdom. He's blessed with resources, rest from his enemies, favor with the people, and wisdom unparalleled, and yet exercises it foolishly. And it all goes back to me to 1 Kings 2, 1 through 4. As the time approached for David to die, he ordered his son Solomon, as for me, I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong and be a man, and keep your obligation to the Lord, to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes, commands, ordinances, and decrees. This is written in the law of Moses, so that you will have success in everything you do and wherever you turn, and so that the Lord will fulfill his promise that he made to me. What's the catch? In the chapters that follow, we hear that, it's not what we hear, it's what we don't hear. Despite Solomon's incredible blessings from God, what do we not hear him doing? This stuff. Focusing, studying, seeking to apply the Lord's statutes, ordinances, commands, decrees. And so Solomon himself increasingly ceases walking on the way of wisdom and increasingly walks on the way of folly instead. And he makes decisions that seem incredibly wise in the eyes of man in the short term, but in the long term sets his people on a course of disaster. And we'll talk about that as we continue. Keep reading, keep reflecting, and keep responding. And I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.